We are in this series which is called, and the series looking at how we are like the senior pastor in our workplace, like Judy said before, that doesn't matter what you are doing during the week, whether you are working as an accountant or a cleaner or a builder or you're a stay-at-home parent or you are retired, God has a call on your life for the season that you are in. And today's topic that we are looking at is having a healthy work-life balance. And this is something I am very, very passionate about. When we were talking about this series, I said, I want to do that one. I want that week. And Peter and Judy were kind enough to let me do these weeks. But I love it. I'm passionate about it because if you can have a good work-life balance, it will either make you or break you. You know, it will either bring freedom and life to your own life and to your family, or it can lead you to burnout and great stress. And so this is a really important topic to get sorted in our lives. And so this morning I'm going to share 3 principles around how we can have this. And we often talk about a work-life balance, but I think it is something that is so changeable. And so perhaps we are looking at less of a balance and more of a flow. More of a flow. There is a flow that we can have in God for our lives. And so my first key this morning is find your work-rest flow. Find your work-rest flow. Romans 12 verse 2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." There is a pattern that the world expects us to follow. There is a drumbeat that the world is putting out there which is so easy to fall in line with. Yet we're to find God's rhythm for us. And sometimes God's rhythm for us looks very, very different to what the world's rhythm is. And it can mean that we find ourselves at odds as to what we're to be focusing on. But as we let God's word and His Holy Spirit transform our minds, we will know what God's will is and how to live in His flow. God has a natural rhythm for our lives. In Genesis 2, it talks about how God created the world. God worked for 6 days, and then on the 7th day He rested. And that is how we're to live our lives. 6 days to work, 1 day to rest. But again, in the world we live in, that can be quite challenging and hard to emulate. 6 days work, 1 day rest. But I think if God saw that it was vital for Him, then it is vital for us also. We must stop. We must have rest. We must pause. We must find margin in our lives. We must be able to breathe to get back to creation and have ourselves filled up, ready for the week ahead. Having a Sabbath is for our own benefit and well-being. And some of you here today may be more naturally driven to have downtime. And then there'll be those of you who will be more naturally driven to work a lot, long hours. But we need to be really careful with that. And, for me, at the beginning of last year, as Pastor Judy said, I began study to do a Bachelor's of Counselling, which will take me another 4 years, and so I'm in for the long haul. And but I'm also working, and I'm a mum and a wife and a daughter and all these other things that we are as people. We have these different roles. And at the beginning of last year, as I got into study, I thought I want to do well. Well, in fact, at that point I was thinking I just want to pass, right? I hadn't studied since I was at school. So I'm like, I may seriously suck at this. I was like, if I can just pass this year, I'll be like, this is a miracle. But then I began to do quite well. And so then I was like, I want to do really well and I want to keep doing well. And so every hour I had spare, I would be like, well, I better do my classwork and I better do an assignment, because for any of you who are studying, there are always assignments to do. They're always due. They're always coming up. And so then I would just keep working. And I sustained that really well for a couple of months, and then I reached this point and I just thought, I'm really tired. And I don't know if I can keep doing this. And I remember Peter and I talking, and he said, Annika, you can't keep going the way you're going. You have to find how to get a day off in your week. And so it meant every single hour counted. Every hour in the evening counted. so that I could work my week so I got a day off. And that's what I did. And it brought me life, and it meant I could do all the things that I was doing and sustain it for the long haul. You know, we all have busy seasons, and that's okay. Life can be really busy. But if your busy season has been for the last 2 years or 5 years, that is not a busy season, that is a busy life. And you need to stop, and you need to take stock and go, maybe some things need to change, because if you are having such a busy life, things are going to be affecting you. Your health, your well-being. If you're married, it'll be affecting your marriage, it'll be affecting relationships, it'll be affecting your family. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven." There is a time for all things, but our world contradicts that, telling us that we can do all things all the time. Technology allows us to shop, work, be in contact with people day and night. You can buy shoes at midnight if you want to buy shoes at midnight. You can contact people in the middle of the night if you want to do that now. This is what our world tells us. Yet, God set rhythms of the dawn, the morning, the afternoon, the evening, the night for a reason. Yet we are thinking we can keep going and going and going day and night. So ask yourself, what is driving you? Is it the call of God on your life? Is it passion for Jesus? Or is it fear of failure? Is it a drive to keep earning more money? Is it easier to stay at work than it is to come home? Sometimes we need to ask ourselves these questions. Sometimes our work-life rhythm gets out of whack because we're driven by fear or worry or stress or concern for money. Matthew 11:28-30 in the message says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me," Jesus says. "Get away with me and you'll recover your life." Some of you need to recover your life today. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. I love that line there. God's unforced rhythms of grace, which won't weigh you down. That is an amazing thing to find. So my second point this morning is seek God first. So how do you know what to focus on and prioritize in your life? Matthew 6:33, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." This has been a key scripture for Peter and I throughout our whole lives. God, we will seek you. We will put you first in our lives. Lord, how would you have us live our lives? Where do you want us to live? Where do you want us to put our kids in school? Who would you have us meet with this week? God, who do you want me to have a conversation with today? Who do you want me to message? Who do you want me to follow up? Who do you want me to check on, Lord? When we put God first, then all these things that we might be concerned about just fall into place. There is a flow and a way to live when we put him first. When we ask for his will, his priorities, and follow those, then everything will fall into place. And there's been times when God has said to me, "I want you to start this new venture. I want you to start up this new thing." And my response is often, "God, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how I'm going to fit that in with everything else that is going on in my life." But it's amazing when we do that how God works it out. You know, Jesus says, "Take up your cross, come follow me, and I will look after the other things." And it will blow your mind how when you follow God and put him first, how much life will come from the things that you put your hand to. Sometimes, though, we need to let go of the old in order to step into the new. You know, when Pete and I were first married, we were in our first year of marriage, things were really busy. And the River Pakuranga was in its first year of being. And that was busy because we would set up church in the morning in a school hall. We'd have church in the morning. We'd often have band practice early, church in the morning, band practice in the afternoon, church at night. We had a second service at night, and then we'd pack down late at night because God was moving and doing things. That meant prayer ministry went till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So we'd pat down and then we'd go home and then we'd work 5 days a week. Then on top of that, we had multiple night meetings. We were running Connect Group, we had leaders meetings, all the rest of it. And then on weekends, as well as that, Peter's itinerant ministry with worship leading was really opening up all around New Zealand. And so we were travelling a lot as well, trying to fit that around everything else that was happening. And I remember we reached this point where we realised that we just weren't managing our time well and we weren't coping so well with life. And, we weren't doing the basic, well, we were, but it was a struggle. Like even things like, let's wash our clothes and let's buy some groceries. We didn't have online shopping in those days. And so it was, how do we fit this in? How do we even see each other as a new married couple? How do we spend time together? Yeah. And we were really praying about it, and we really felt that God was saying that I was to cut down a couple of days at work, be part-time at work, and that for Pete, he was to go part-time into itinerant ministry and part-time starting up a music business. And we were like, really, God? Because that kind of seems really scary. And we're not sure how we're going to, pay for our rent. And anyway, that weekend, I remember we were in Wellington. We were running this big conference down there with some others. And we were praying in our cabin beforehand. And then we went into the meeting. And that morning, a guest speaker pulled us out and had a word for us. And the word was basically telling us to do exactly what we had just talked about. To the point it was like, was the guy listening into our conversation, And we were like, all right, Lord. But my biggest fear was, what about my work? I don't want to let my boss down. And I just remember praying and thinking, oh, God, this could go really bad. He is not going to want me to go part-time. And this amazing thing happened that week. That week, this girl walked in and she said, I would love work experience in this place. Would you please give me work experience? I'll work here for free. And just anything to be able to get into this particular business. I was a florist and she wanted to become a florist. And I went to my boss and I said, could we please bring her on part-time? I will step back part-time and then I can go and travel with Pete and do what we need to do and actually see each other. And you can still have someone employed here to do this job. And that's exactly what happened. And it was incredible. And God just opened up that door. And often when I think, Lord, how is something going to work? I think back to that time and I think, you know what, God, you are already maneuvering things behind the scenes in ways that I could never dream of. Sometimes, though, we need to step out in faith. So what are his ways? What are his answers for you? What is the rhythm he has for you? Take on God's priorities for your life and you will flourish. Having God and church as a part of your foundation in your life will give you something solid to stand on and walk out from. And for your family. Having church there as a non-negotiable. That is how you remain steady, is when you surround yourself with people of faith who will pray with you and stand with you through the highs and lows. When you have church as an integral part of your flow and it's always there, then that makes a difference for your family, for your kids. Having it there, speaking well of it. People often say to us, well, how do you have kids that still love God? And I'm like, well, firstly, church was a non-negotiable. We were always in church on a Sunday, always there. Even if there were birthday parties or there were auditions for school things, that didn't happen on a Sunday morning. We were in the house of God because the house of God was our priority as a family. And they just knew that's what we do. There's no question around it. It's just what happened. And we would always speak well of church. And if you've been in church for a while, and if you've been in ministry or anything, you will know there are highs, but there are lows. But you don't need to share the lows with everybody. And we wouldn't share the lows with our kids. We would always talk highly of church and esteem how awesome church is, because church is awesome, and we are so blessed to be a part of it. But sometimes people go home and they have pasta for lunch. Let's not be ones who have pasta or the pasta for lunch. When we put God first, then everything else will flow from that. Yeah. My third point this morning is have tough conversations. Have tough conversations. And when I say that, I mean, firstly, we need to often have tough conversations with ourselves And then we need to have some tough conversations with the people around us who are closest to us. You know, the lines of work have spilled over the boundaries that were once set, and work now follows us everywhere we go. The accessibility of our lives to others has meant that we are continually in contact and being able to be connected and accessed always. Ephesians 5 verse 15 to 16 says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil." You know, if you don't have a plan for your time, somebody else will. Literally. Somebody else will fill up your time if you do not decide how to fill it up. We talked about this particular topic a couple of weeks ago at our Pakuranga church, and we actually had a panel that morning and had different ones share. And actually our daughter Annika, who is on River News that you see here each week, she was on the panel, and she was talking about this app that she has, and she has like, what are they called? Something. Habit trackers. She tracks her habits, so as she does her different things she's going to do each day, it goes ping, and well done, you've done whatever, right? So technology can be a great thing, right? And but anyway, she would talk about how she would even put time in her calendar for things that she would like to do, because her week is full, right? But she puts in there things that she would like to do as well, because otherwise it will get filled up by other things and other people and other needs. And sometimes we need to look at how we're spending our time. We aren't doing so well as a people with the level of burnout and issues around stress. And a couple of weeks ago, I heard these statistics. 70% of adults in their 20s and 30s say they're experiencing some level of burnout. 82% of senior executives regularly finish work feeling emotionally and physically exhausted. And for many, we're living at an unsustainable pace, and we need to seriously look at how we are choosing to live our lives. We can't keep going and going and going. We must learn to stop. As Carrie Newhoff says, if we don't declare a finish line, our bodies will. And I think that is so true. Years and years ago, when our children were younger and we just started pastoring the church, there was a lot to do, right? And there's a lot to be involved in. And so I was involved in a lot and said yes to nearly everything. And I remember I just finished running a women's conference, and I got really sick, really sick for about 3 months. And I just couldn't get better. And I ended up in hospital. And after that, I was just in a place, and every week I'd be messaging my mother's group and the Mainly Music group and all these things I was involved in. I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it today, but next week I'll try and be there. And it was this continual stress and pressure of what I needed to get back to. And it reached this point, a wonderful woman in our church took me away to visit a friend of ours who's a counsellor. And this lovely friend of ours who's a counsellor, she asked me all these questions, and she said, Annika, you are burnt out completely, and you are on you're bordering depression. And she said, you need to stop everything for 6 months. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. Like, do you get what I do? Like, it's just not even a possibility. Never going to happen. And she said, well, you're not going to get better without stopping. And so we had many discussions over 24 hours, and we compromised, and I said, for 3 months, I will stop everything. I will step out of everything. I still went to church, right? I didn't take a break from God, just took a break from doing, and learnt who I was in God without doing, which some of us need to do. And anyway, so I took a break for that time. But I would never have ended up in that situation if I had learnt to say no, and learnt to have boundaries and put some things in place and figured out how to look after my own well-being. Yes. If things aren't going so well for your inner health due to work-life flow, then it's time to start having some serious conversations with yourself, to be honest with yourself, to make some changes, to give yourself permission to stop, to alter expectations maybe around what you think you should have, around what you think people like you should be doing with your life. Time is one of the most precious commodities that we all have, and we will never get it back. You will never get back the time that you have with your kids, with your parents, with your friends, with your loved one, you will not get that time back. Are you valuing the time that you're in? We all get the same amount of time every day, but you get to choose how you spend the 24 hours that you have. Perhaps you need to have some tough conversations with those around you. Maybe you need to talk to your other half about what's important for your family and for how things are going to work together. And again, around that time, we were in a place where everything was so busy, we would often have 5 nights a week out or with meetings at home. And I remember after so many years of that, I just said to Pete, we just can't keep doing this. Like, we're going to blow up, you know. And so we worked out a different rhythm. If we have this night out, then we have this night at home. We just worked out, how do we do this differently? Because the need is always going to be there sometimes. Yeah. And so we need to work out, how do we work this for our life so that we can sustain our lives well for the long term. Yeah. It wasn't easy, and it meant saying no. And there's still the odd week when the rules get broken and emergencies happen, and we work with that because we need to be flexible as people. Yeah. But still, we need to look at things as a whole. If you're not sure with how you're doing with your work and rest flow, then maybe ask those around you. Ask your other half. They're probably waiting for an opportunity to tell you, potentially. So have boundaries. Turn things off. Shut your laptop at the end of the day. Put your phone on silent. Do not check your emails after 7 p.m. People send grumpy emails after 7 p.m. I've decided not many great emails happen after 7 p.m. and you don't need to read those right before you go to bed. So don't check your emails in the evenings. Have some boundaries around your work-life flow. If I can have you come up, Chris. So if you're a parent here today too, I just want to say that you need to get the balance for your family really well. Your kids will be watching you as to what you prioritize and as to what you think is important for your family. And one of the greatest tragedies that can happen years ago, I was listening to someone speak on this, and they were talking about how one of the greatest tragedies that was happening in families is that parents are filling up all their extra time with extracurricular activities. And they said it's just burning families out. It's stopping kids from actually getting to do what they're meant to be doing as kids and being kids by just putting in all these extra things. Families are getting so busy by running around from one thing to another, it's distracting them from the very things they're called to. And so we need to look at it for our families if you're a parent here. Set some things in place. Maybe that says no. No, Johnny, we are not doing 10 things every week with your life. Because that means I'm doing 10 extra things every week with my life. Look at how things are affecting your family as a whole. We need to have work, rest, flow. We need to put God first, and we need to have tough conversations with ourselves and with those around us. And so this morning I want us to ask ourselves, how are we doing with this? Are we putting God first? Are we prioritizing God first in our lives with our time, with the hours that we are spending? Do we spend time with God? Do we seek Him first? Do we ask Him, what does He want you to do with your day? How are things going with the amount of work that you're doing? Do you have boundaries in place? Are there some boundaries you need to put in place? What is the tough conversation you need to have with yourself to prevent yourself from burning out and to be able to do all that God has called you to do? You know, the enemy loves to come in and steal and rob and kill and destroy. That is his mission. And if he can just keep us busy enough that it gets us off God's mission for where He has called us, then He will do that. He will keep us busy doing so that we're not being all that He has called us to be.